For a session sponsored by Amadeus, please welcome Product Marketing Manager, Amadeus Airlines IT, Mike Robinson, in discussion with Skift Research Director Luke Pajarski.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much. Great to be here today. Really gives me great pleasure to be here to talk to you about the airline space. So we're going to be joined here with my colleague Mike Robinson from Amadeus. So we're going to be talking about pricing. We're going to be talking about revenue management. A lot going on in this space. So for a lot of us, though, both people inside and outside of the airline experience, a lot of times we tend to think about airlines as there's something being a little bit wrong, right? Something dysfunctional in the market going on. And you know, for most of us, I wouldn't blame you, just given the headlines that kind of come up on a day-to-day basis, right? We're talking about things like passengers fighting with the airlines on fares, right? We're talking about airlines against airlines, low-cost carriers versus full-cost carriers. We're talking about the ultra-low-cost carriers. We're talking about customers upset about their loyalty points not panning out. So there's just so much going on. The list goes on and on. And as a research group, when we see this, we think that there's something wrong given the context of what's happening in travel, right? Because this should actually be a great time to be in the airline space, right? We have super low costs. Fuel costs are as low as they've ever been. We have super high demand, great economy in the United States and Europe. We have new markets coming online in Asia and Latin America. So on one side, it should be a great time to be in airlines, but again, we have this kind of, this scenario playing out where we have this kind of zero-sum game between the customer and the airline, where when the fares go up, everybody and their mother starts complaining that they can't get their cheap flights to Florida going, right? When the prices go down, airlines start going out of business, everybody starts complaining about the level of service that they're getting for the airlines. So the big research question that we wanted to ask, that we worked with Amadeus on, is whether or not there is, and I think everybody here has the same question, is whether or not there is kind of a win-win scenario for the airlines where carriers can compete on a more sustainable level, work towards more favorable economics in terms of operating margin, but also work towards better customer experience, better customer care and satisfaction. It's a big question. It's something that we've ultimately been working on all summer on this huge initiative that we've been working on with Amadeus, a big paper that we've been working on, really taking this kind of cross-disciplinary look at the airline space. We've been talking to carriers, we've been talking to the academics, we've been talking to economists, pricing strategists, revenue management strategists, to really try to get a holistic perspective of what's been going on, and if anything, to come out with a vision that allows airlines to compete in this space more effectively. So it's been a great experience working with Mike as well, who's coming from a great background and he'll talk about that with Frontier and Amadeus and Amazon. So a lot going on in the space. Let's just touch a little before Mike talks about what's happening now and a little bit more into the future and some strategy. Let's take a little step backward and remember how we all got to this space, right? 1978, right? The era of deregulation, where the government finally stopped telling the airlines what they can and cannot charge for tickets, right? How many of you in this room remember these guys? People Express? No? So, all right, well, what boggles my mind is that a lot of the same kind of competitive antics that have been going on in the airline space now have really been going on for the last 40 years. It's been 40 decades of pretty much business as usual, low-cost carriers battling it out with the majors. People Express came on as a reaction to deregulation. You know, the same economics, low-cost model, biting into the margins for the big carriers. But something did happen which kind of ended that round of fare wars that were going on in the early to mid 80s. Does anybody want to care to take a guess? Right. So, dawned the age of modern day revenue management, right? The majors realized that, wait a minute, we have something that the low-cost carriers don't, and that's scale. With the dawn of computers, they also realized that they can actually track demand and anticipate demand in airlines to a level that they can actually start changing their pricing around, right? So they say, wait, we have all this data, we can just start changing our pricing around so we can effectively become two-in-one airlines and say, wait, let's make every third seat 50% cheaper, let's say. All of a sudden, the likes of People Express and all those other airlines quickly realized that they don't really have a leg to stand on. So within 12 months, People Express went from being the 5th largest airline to basically dissolving and getting absorbed into Continental Holdings because of modern day revenue management. So I'm going to pass it over to Mike. He's going to talk a little bit about some of the latest developments that have been going on in the space.
Thanks, Luke.
Sure.
So this was a real evolutionary leap that Luke was describing, the creation of modern revenue management, which started with airlines and then disseminated out throughout the industry. Well, what we see is that we're now on the edge of that next evolutionary leap. We're moving away from a world where it's just fair to one where there's a much more complex landscape. And it's really, really exciting because there's so much going on and it's so interdisciplinary. So what specifically are we talking about? What we're talking about is the data-driven creation, pricing, placement, and promotion of customized offers about airline flights. Now at Amadeus, we call that airline merchandising. And it crosses all of the airline sales channels, and it impacts all of the airline's commercial teams. So we're talking revenue management, pricing, marketing, everyone. And airlines do this. They do this merchandising for 3 core goals. 1, to increase their airline revenue. 2 is to increase their competitiveness. And 3 is to increase their customer satisfaction. Now, the airline revenue story is probably the one with which you're most familiar. Merchandising shows up mostly these days as ancillary revenue, that is, non-ticket passenger revenue. Globally, that's about 10% of passenger revenue. But for some airlines, they're actually embracing merchandising more, and they're seeing the impact on their bottom line. For those carriers who have really started to move into merchandising, their operating margins are on average 12 points ahead of the industry average. For those carriers, this number could be 40% or more. And that's kind of my world. As Luke alluded to, I joined Amadeus from Frontier Airlines, the low-fare carrier in Denver, where I was ancillary program manager. Now, I've been in pricing and merchandising for about a decade, but I still actually like to think of myself as a bit of an economist, dating back to my days at the University of Chicago. Economics, right? But you know, it's kind of funny because the University of Chicago takes a really interdisciplinary approach to education. So I took economics and history and maths, but I also got to take Egyptology and Czech literature, studying writers like Karl Čapek, the writer who invented the word robot. Fun fact. So this interdisciplinary approach, that kind of rhymes with what's going on today. And at Amadeus, we see now that airlines can and do leverage research in pricing, statistics, mathematical optimization, and Nobel Prize-winning research in economics, including behavioral economics and game theory. One application is in the intelligent grouping of customers. We're doing this at Amadeus using artificial intelligence with several of our airline partners. And one of the things that allows you to do is to be able to infer why a customer is considering taking a trip before they've even made a booking. Then you can use that to create recommendations that are usable and helpful. So things like, if you're taking a business trip, if it's a short one, the data tells us you're probably not going to want to check a bag, but you may be interested in priority access, getting on the plane first. If it's a longer trip, you probably want to really see what that lie flat seat looks like. That's important. Now, you're definitely going to need some bags for your big family vacation, right? And you'd probably appreciate some help finding like a local tour guide, some local activities, because you're going somewhere great. But that's not going to be that helpful to you if you're going to your daughter's graduation or grandma's 80th birthday party. One of the other things that you can do with this sort of clustering is you can create dynamic bundles of flight-related ancillaries. Take from all the things that may be available on your flight: premium seat assignments, checked bag options, meals, priority access, refundability, and surface what's really relevant in a bundle for a customer. That one technique, called mixed bundling, that leverages customer segmentation, classical economics, behavioral economics, and mathematical optimization, all in just that one technique. Now, the technology and the scalable data science that makes this all possible today is actually really recent, and that's great. But some of these fundamentals have been around for a really long time. They're really durable concepts, like customer segmentation, which dates back to at least 1350 BC, at a time when farmers and merchants and the elites had sort of different needs for things like grain and wood, and they paid different prices for them. I learned about that in Egyptology class. And from Czech literature, I'll quote Milan Kundera, who said, "Businesses do only two things: marketing and innovation." So it's been great to work with Luke and to find out about the marketing and the innovation that's driving this next evolutionary leap. And I'm going to pass it back to Luke for a little bit more on exactly what they found.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's the brains behind the operation in terms of the algorithms, in terms of the technology, the analytics behind it all. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot that happens in terms of strategy and in terms of delivery of a lot of these things when we're talking about merchandising. And one great example is this idea of customer centricity. I think over the last couple of days, we've been talking about the concept a couple of times. I think one thing just to clarify is that when we're talking about customer centricity, we're talking a lot more than just good customer service or personalization. Customer centricity is really a revenue-generating strategy that focuses on identifying and locking in and focusing on your core customer base, your most profitable customer base, right? Because what that ends up giving you is the opportunity to really maximize profit, because those are going to be the people that end up spending more. And there's this great case study with Harrah's Casino, Cherokee Casino, that leverages both room revenue and gambling revenue and looks at how their core customer base really goes in between those two and how they're able to track those different revenue streams to maximize profitability, right, Mike?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So absolutely. And that's exactly the sort of thing that we're talking about.
Yeah. So it's really, so just a word in terms of strategy, thinking about customer centricity and what airlines are dealing with right now in terms of mixing revenues between seat revenues and ancillary revenues and how that all kind of fits together to not only generate maximum revenue, but also generate maximum satisfaction, customer experience. Does anybody know this place? Balthazars? Yeah. So New York institution, right? If you haven't been there, definitely go. Heart of Soho, sit at the bar, get yourself some seafood, get yourself a nice cocktail, but also, a lot of lessons to be learned for airlines outside of the airlines business, especially when it comes to how they present offers to customers. And there's some fundamentals in terms of behavioral economics and how menus at restaurants are actually delivered. There's some really cool tricks that go on when designing menus. And for Balthazars, a restaurant that's been successful for the last 20 years in New York, that's not an easy feat, right, to outlast the hospitality business for 20 years in New York. And I think part of that success has been this amazing menu design that they have not actually changed since in the last 20 years, but there are a lot of really cool tricks that they use in that menu, things like aversion pricing, where people are actually less likely to buy the most expensive item on the menu and less likely to buy the least expensive item on the menu. So if you're not going to go for the Balthazar, which is a $150 seafood platter, you might go for Le Grand, which is, ultimately something that that airlines are looking into right now in terms of visualization, how they present offers. But ultimately, again, it's to maximize revenue. But just like Balthazars, where to do the long game in New York City as a restaurant, you have to focus on loyalty, you have to focus on satisfaction, make sure that your customers keep coming back. So that's just just a quick introduction, a preview of this. I think this great paper that we're going to be publishing at the end of October. We're super excited about it, taking this kind of an interdisciplinary approach to looking at airline competition. And we hope you enjoyed the presentation and download the paper. And we'll see you after the program. So thanks so much.